Holding these books is a lot. It's a lot. I'm not. Oh, my nose is itchy. Right. Hello guys, and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about books that I have said goodbye to, that I have departed from, that I have said sayonara to. We are going to be talking about DNFs, books that I did not finish. I think there are 5 books in total that I'm going to speak about. The thumbnail might be a bit misleading because I'm holding up a book in there that actually I haven't DNF'd. I just wanted it for comparison reasons, but anyway, we're here. So let us talk about the first book, and the first book is Northwest NW by Zadie Smith. I got to page 129 before I was just like, this strikes again, Miss Smith strikes again. I will not be reading the rest of this book. So this book is actually split into 4 separate sections. I would say that about 4 different characters, so it follows the life of 4 Londoners, Leah, Natalie, Felix and Nathan. Apologies for any background noise, the window is open and they are doing some work, so maybe I'll close one of them. It's a bit warm. So yes, this book follows 4 characters, Leah, Natalie, Felix and Nathan. And I think our first chapter is actually about, is it Leah or Natalie? It's about one of the women. Oh, I can't remember who it's about. I think it might be Natalie. And yeah, the story plays on from there. You just sort of follow her day-to-day life really and find out more about this character. And then the next one I think is actually about Nathan maybe, or Felix, one of the male characters. And it was there that I stopped because getting through this book, it was real drudgery. I don't know if it's because she was so like sort of unhappy with her life or just very like middle ground. But I also think it was the way like she was being described and the way like her section just generally was. It was so boring to read about. She wasn't really a nice person. She didn't really seem to appreciate, you know, all the things going on around her. Fair enough, she had her own sort of issue that she wanted to deal with, and like sort of is really brought to the forefront towards the end of her section. But you read about this issue and you just think, okay, one, like that is completely your right and your decision, but I think this is something you also need to discuss with your husband. And she just doesn't really like anything, not really want to participate in anything, and then that makes you as a reader just feel like really distant from her because she feels very distant from everything. And I just wasn't really here for it. And then it got to the section of like the guy, whatever, and I was just like, I wasn't confused, but there was just a lot of chatter. He's gone to meet someone and they're like basically walking through the streets of London doing a lot of talking, and then they go somewhere like a pub or something and start talking more, and the conversation is just so random, and I'm just like, what is actually going on here? Like, what is the point in all of this? And it goes on for so long. I'm just like, you know, I can get a bit of randomness because I get probably that's what the character is like. He's the kind of person that, you know, jumps from one conversation to another, and you know, sometimes when you see 2 people talking, they're literally talking about 2 different things and you're just like, what is happening? I just don't like to read about that in my books. I thought the pacing of this book was quite slow. I didn't like it, the slowness of the pacing, because actually the slowness of the pacing, there's no payoff because the story isn't even that interesting. And I know eventually like these 4 characters I think maybe do meet in some sort of way, shape or form, but I do not care about their stories. Like, I literally do not care about what happens to the woman in the main character in the first chapter. But other than that, yeah, I was just reading the book and I was just like, if I have to pick this book up one more time, like I might scream. It was just boring. It wasn't for me. I think what also makes this really hard to like gel with is in some areas it is quite poetic, in some areas it is quite focused on just describing little moments. But then other areas it's very like sort of plot focused, and it's that sort of mix and blend in between of like really horrible characters that I just think, what am I reading? Like, I have no interest in any of this. And yeah, for me, like I hate to say it, but I do not think I will ever be picking up another Zadie Smith book, because this is the 2nd book of hers that I've read that I just have thought, I don't like this. It's just not my kind of vibe. So let's go on to talk about this, which is a poetry collection by Anna Sampson. She Will Soar, Bright Brave Poems of Freedom by Women. What is this? I think it's Foundation, maybe? I don't know. So this was given to me by a friend who was just like sort of giving away her books that she didn't want, and I said yes to it because I had read this, and I think I have spoken about this previously before in a video, so if I have, I will link it up in the card. I read this, I got this for Christmas and I really enjoyed it, so I thought, oh yeah, like I'll read this bit. I don't know how far, actually wait, I do again have my little dog-eared pages. I got in 147 pages into it, and this book is, it's not as long as it looks because it's got loads of indexes and first lines and biographies and things like that. So let's go back. 218 pages. So wait, where did I get to? No, I'm not willing to read the rest of it. I just didn't really like any of the poems in this. So the problem with a poetry collection like this is I think it is always going to be hit and miss, because she has really mixed contemporary poets with like classical poets and just like poets that are like BC. I don't know if anyone in there is BC, but there'll be some old poets in here. And this collection was quite nice because it varied on different themes. So there was friendship, there was, she says there was friendship and then doesn't know the rest. There's roots and growing up, there's love, and mindfulness, joy, nature. This is quite heavily themed on freedom, as it says here. And so, not that the poems are political or anything like that, some of them are, but yeah, wanderlust and dream of freedom, feeling free, growing up, words that can set you free, travel over lands. I just kind of felt like these all sound the same, like just put them in one area. Like obviously it's nice to group things, but I didn't really feel like the grouping helped. And the majority of these poems were just so boring to me, and it ranged from the contemporary poets to the sort of classical poets. I just wasn't here for them. I'm reading all of them. I didn't find them inspirational. Every single time like I put the book down, I just felt like it was a chore to pick the book up again. And it's really hard to talk about, I guess, well, judge the book based on the quality of the writing, because the writing is so varied. Like all these authors have different writing styles. You know, you're reading some, it might be have a little bit of Scottish dialect in it. Some might use contemporary phrases now. Some are obviously like written like in oldie English, and things like that. So it's not really about the writing style or anything like that. It's simply just a collection of poems, and perhaps the theme for this just isn't for me. None of these poems excited me. None of the poems that I think like actually played around with language, played around with words in a way that made me feel excited about poetry, and that's kind of what I like to feel in my poems. Overall, I wasn't reading any of them and feeling very inspired or feeling very emotional or very connected to them. And again, that's another thing that I really like in my poems. So yeah, it really was such a shame. I think I gave this collection 3 stars. I'm not sure entirely, but I will confirm on the screen when I'm editing if I didn't give it 3 stars. So let's talk about a book that I haven't DNF'd at the moment, but I am thinking I will DNF, and I want to give it one more go. But at the moment, I'm in a bit of a reading rut, so I don't really want to give it a go now and sort of, you know, dislike it and then put it up, DNF it. It's just not a fair sort of circumstance to do it in. But this is the other half of Augusta Hope. Honestly, I think this is one of the most beautiful book covers ever. It is embossed or debossed. I don't know, maybe it's just woody with these little gold, are they dragonflies? They look like dragonflies. I mean, I don't know about animals or insects, so I don't really know. I don't like insects. How far am I into this book? I am on page 58, and it just took me a while to even get to page 58 in this book, if I'm honest with you. It is a struggle. I'm on the struggle bus with this book. Basically what this book is about Augusta. She has a sister named, I was going to call her sister July, but I don't know what her sister is named. Like her sister name is Julia, so that's it. Her sister, they're twins, but her sister was born on the last day of July and she was born on the first day of August. That's what their parents would call them. They live somewhere in the UK, and their dad is like a owner of a school uniform shop, and I don't know what her mum does. And they live in this sort of like, what's it, cul-de-sac essentially. And they sort of know their neighbours. But Augusta basically is quite different. She has memorised all of the dictionary or something like that by the time she's 8 or something like that. Yeah, at 8 she spins the globe and picks up, no, at 6 she's memorising the dictionary, at 7 she's correcting her teachers, at 8 she spins the globe and picks her favourite country on the sound of its name, Burundi. And now that she's an adult, Augusta has no interest in the going on of the small town she lives, where she lives with her parents and her beloved twin sister Julia. So I haven't actually got to the part where she's a grown adult. At this point she's still about 8. She is still quite a young kid, and running parallel along to sort of Augusta's narrative, so she's the narrator in this book, is another narrator, and I'm not sure if he is ever specified by his name, but he is someone that's living in Burundi. Yeah, his name is Parfait. That's why it's so weird to me. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And you know, we've briefly been introduced to him and his family life and sort of the circumstances there. And obviously I'm thinking that these two eventually end up meeting, as now Augusta has an interest in Burundi. But it sounds to me like they might not actually meet until she's an adult. And I don't know that I'll be prepared to get there. I don't know that I'll ever be meeting adult Augusta and Parfait when they meet. I just don't find the book very interesting. I find it's not even slow paced, but I find with listening to a narrator who is clearly cleverer than everyone else, and she's not smug about it or anything like that, but you can tell she's very bored by her family, and the way they also treat her is kind of, it's not great, but they're not horrible to her or anything like that. They just kind of want their complacent daughter. But there's nothing of interest in here for me. And I think one of the reasons I'm also struggling with this is I read the biography of the author just very briefly. I don't know if it's in here or if it was on Goodreads, and I don't know if the book is like partly just like inspired by her life. Yeah, so Joanna Dunn read Spanish at the University of London with a stint of faculty, blah blah blah. She went on to teach Spanish and English to all ages. Okay, it might have been on her Goodreads thing, but it just seemed like the author might have imposed herself into the book. I don't really feel I want to read about it if it's meant to be like a semi-autobiography. Like I'm not really here for that. Obviously the meeting of the guy in Burundi might not be and stuff like that, and that might be like embellished and stuff like that. So yeah, it's actually a shame about this because it did sound really good, but overall I just don't think this book is sort of my vibe. It's something that I'd actually genuinely be interested in. I'm not really here for hearing about Augusta's life or hearing about the lives of the people in her area and what they do. I really also could care less about how sort of the story links together her and this guy from Burundi. I'm just like, nothing I've read so far has made me interested and want to know more. Right, let's go on to talk about two ebooks on DNF. So the first one is How We Are, translated by Jessica Gayton Johannesson. This was a NetGalley arc, and I don't know how far I got into this, but I started reading it and I was just like, no, my worst kind of book. Abstract books that are just so wishy-washy from start to finish. You'll start in one area in the chapter and then you'll just end up somewhere completely different, and I just really wasn't here for it. I was just like, I'm not gonna read this book. The thing about this book is it sounded so interesting to me, so fascinating to me, because I think what this book does, so I think it's a translated book. I'm not just basing that on the title, but it was trying to play with language. I think there's a huge focus in here about language and like sort of what that means to different people in terms of like when you speak a different language. So I'll read the blurb for you. It says here, Swedish immigrant Kristen won't talk about the project growing inside of her. Her Brazilian-born Scottish boyfriend Kieran won't speak English at all. He's trying to immerse himself in a Swedish, I don't know what that word said, language bath to prepare for their future, whatever the fick that means. Their Edinburgh flat is starting to feel very small. As this young couple is forced to confront the thing that they are both avoiding, they must reckon with the bigger questions of the world outside and their place in it. And there's a sort of other blurb here. It says, people say I'm sorry all the time when it can mean both I'm sorry I hurt you and I'm sorry someone else did something I have nothing to do with. It's like the English language gave up on trying to find a word for sympathy, which wasn't also the word for guilt. And I just think that phrase is just so interesting and nice, because I like also think like it's true. So really, I thought I was looking forward to a book that was going to sort of play with language, and it does do that. You know, she does talk about, you know, the fact that certain things mean different things, and you know, really sort of dissecting that. But ultimately, the book feels very hollow. The book feels very hollow because, as you hear from this, like there's something growing inside of her, and she's trying to ignore it. And so you have a character who's quite distant from the realities of her life, and therefore, when she's sort of narrating the story to you, she feels quite distant. And she talks about very random things, like her boyfriend, I think he is a carer in like a nursing home, so they talk about like the different things to do with his job, and like one of the one of the people that he cares for, and I think maybe they stole something or something like that. It's just really random bits of information that aren't central to the story that like I wanted to read and listen to. And as the story kept going on, there was just more of that, just more of these really random bits. And I know in the end it would probably tie it all together, but I was just like, I'm not actually prepared to wait and read the rest of the book to find the way it ties it all together, especially because that sort of random bits of introduction of really things that don't really matter, together with a very sort of distant narrator. It's not for me. I don't really like narrators that are like super really distant and not really like involved in their life, that they're keeping you at arm's length, because then I just feel like you never really get to know the character, you never really get to know what's happening, and you just feel kind of sad. Like you just feel like you're watching this really sad thing from far away, and I just really wasn't here for that. I really did like the fact that her boyfriend was like learning Swedish, because there was, you know, talk there of what the different things meant, and he would say certain things and then she would like sort of be commenting on them like as the narrator to us. But yeah, she was a bit of a downer in terms of a character as well, and I just thought this book's going to be a bit miserable, it's going to be a bit all over the place, and I'm not really here for it. It's not really, I think, going to explore language in the way that perhaps I thought it was, and if it does, I'm not actually prepared to read the rest of the book for it to get there, because it's going to be tinged with all this sort of miserableness and randomness that I'm not prepared to deal with. The final book that I am going to speak about, that DNF, is The Truth About the Harry Quebec Affair by Joel Dicker. This is a translated book, so it's translated from French, or the French, and this was actually a book club pick for a book club that I'm part of, and it sounded so good. And I'm going to read you the blurb because it sounds fantastic, and it's got absolutely great reviews, like ratings. It's got a 4-star rating on Goodreads. Oh, I wonder if there's because it says Marcus Goldman #1, so I wonder if there's there is a second book. Okay, so it says here, The Truth About the Harry Quebec Affair. August 30th, 1975, the day 15-year-old Nola Callaghan is glimpsed fleeing through the woods, never to be heard from again. The day Somerset, New Hampshire, lost his innocent 33-year-old Marcus Goldman, a successful novelist, visits Somerset. Well, okay, I'm not going to read this whole blurb because this blurb is so long. Basically, what happens? The book opens up with the author Marcus Goldman, who has just written a best-selling novel. It is gone, like, he's making all the money, it's #1 in all the charts, and then he is being hounded by his agent and also his publisher to, like, basically release the next bestseller. And I will come back to sort of, this is what that played into one of the reasons why I just did not like the book. But basically, he has a mentor called Harry Quebec, and Harry Quebec was his teacher when he was at school or something like that, and they became really good friends, so he often goes and stays with him. 15 years ago, a girl named Nola went missing from the area. No one knows what's happened to her. Like, there was a call that she went sort of running past someone's house, was last seen in the woods, and then actually, weirdly enough, the woman, actually, maybe I shouldn't say this because it'll be a spoiler, so I won't say that bit. So she went missing, and basically one day, I don't know how, so his mentor Harry is getting his garden dug up to have like some flower beds done and or something like that, and they find the body of this girl. This is not a spoiler, it's literally on the back of the book. They find the body of this girl, and the guy Harry admits to having an affair with her. This man was a grown-ass man and this girl was 15 years old. And so again, I will come back to that point of another reason as to why I did not finish this book. And so the book ensues. So what happens from this is Marcus decides that he's going to do his own investigation, and whilst he's doing his own investigation, he's actually going to write the book. So he's going to write The Truth About the Harry Quebec Affair. So it's a book within a book, very meta, we get it, like whatever. First of all, so yes, that's actually the premise of the book. There is so much more that happens in the book because I've been to the book club and we've discussed the book, so I actually know like what happens in the book. And hearing about it, I'm just kind of glad I didn't read the book. Like, it would have been very interesting, but the points in the book that annoyed me would have been like, I could not have taken this book any further. So the first bit, like I said, about his author, sort of his agent and his publisher hounding him. If you read any sort of like American classic, or like something like The Devil Wears Prada, where you just have these horrible bosses that are saying these very stereotypical, like I feel like American sitcom, Hollywood movie things, that's just what all of those scenes felt like. You get agents calling and be like, Marcus, why haven't you written this book? And then it's just like, you know, if you don't, we're going to cancel your contract, you're not the next big thing, da 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 da. And it just felt so trite. I was just like, why are you writing this? This is so cringe. And I kind of thought maybe it's the translation, so give it a bit of time, but it just kept happening, so that was annoying. The second thing was, once I'm editing this, I'll let you know how far I got into the book, because I felt like I got a good chunk of the way into the book. The second thing was the issue of the fact that this girl was 15 and this man was at least in his 30s. And at least twice in that section that I read, and it really was towards the end of it, did anyone really comment on the fact that this Harry guy was a paedophile? Because everyone was just like, oh my god, she went missing and now she's in his garden. Oh, he's this great like writer. Because one thing I forgot to mention is the Harry guy has also written like a great like best-selling novel, so everyone loved him in his area, and you know, people really respected him. So really, people were just talking about the fact that, you know, they pulled his books out and they couldn't believe that, like, when they found her body, they found her buried with like one of his manuscripts, which is the manuscript of that book, and people were just talking about that. And I'm like, why is literally no one focusing on the fact that this guy is a paedophile? Why? I just need someone to condemn him so that actually I can go forward with this book. But as the book went on, people were just not condemning him. And towards the end bit that I read, people were like, you know, oh, actually, yeah, it was, you know, it's kind of weird that he was like seeing this girl. Like, people were more concerned with the fact that she was dead than the fact that he had been carrying on a relationship with her. And it was just like, this is very, very weird to me. And I just didn't like the vibes. And then yeah, it was just so over sensational. Like the things that Marcus was doing, I was like, there's a sort of scene where he meets with a police officer and I'm just like, that just wouldn't happen. Like that just wouldn't happen. And it's just the things he's doing, I'm like, half of these things just wouldn't happen. You would not be allowed access to do these things. So like, I'm gonna need some realism in this part of the book. So yeah, those three things paired together meant I was just reading this book and I was just like, I actually cannot. And you know, if a book was 300 pages, I would have read it. I would have carried on reading. But this book was 600 pages and I think I was only like on page 150 or something like that. I was definitely probably about 25% of the way through the book. So I was just like, if this is going to carry on, I can't for 600 pages. I'm going to read a book that's 600 pages. I have no problem reading a book that's 600 pages. I would love longer books in all honesty, but I need it to be good. I need it to not be full of like low-key, full of misogyny and just be fucking over dramatic for no reason. There is something to me shady about writing a book about the girl that your friend mentor might have killed but definitely had a relationship with, and using that for personal gain, for to get money to write your next book, just overall to get famous. Like I think that's really shady and not good. Like it just throws a lot of morality into question, and I just wasn't here for it. And it, like, if you read this book, like please let me know, because I know from listening at the book club that, you know, Enola or Nola's character isn't who she seems to be. But then I also wonder if there's a bit of victim blaming in there. Like, no matter how old a 15-year-old acts, you can't be a 30-plus-year-old man fiddling with a 15-year-old. I will never allow, no matter how the girl acts, I will never allow that to be okay. That is victim blaming, that is victim shaming, and it is not okay. So obviously I've not read the rest of the book, so I cannot really comment on that. But I feel like the book goes on to be quite dramatic, and I'm glad that I pulled in and stopped at the spot that I did. And it does also sound like it's the kind of book that would have actually frustrated me further had I read more of it. So for those reasons, to not like, basically I thought I also don't want to read the whole book and then go to the book club and slate it. So I was just like, to have very minimal opinions on the book, I'm just going to finish it here, because this is not for me. Like, I've tried it a bit more, I've tried it even a bit more. It's not for me. So yeah, for those 3 points alone, that book was just like vetoed for me. So those are the books that I have recently DNF'd. As I mentioned in my last sort of video, which was my reading vlog, I am in a bit of a reading rut at the moment, so I haven't actually been reading that much, just to save me really just DNFing books all over the place. But yeah, let me know of any books that you have DNF'd recently, and I'll see you in another one. Bye!